Hello, this is Elizabeth Bergman, and I'm presenting on the Next Generation Science Standards. I'm going to be talking to a student teacher, so I'm pretending right now that they don't know much about this, and I just want to do an introduction here. I'm going to be walking through, like I said, the Next Generation Science Standards. This is something that we read an article about, and I'm still new, but I want to be able to teach a student teacher what these are all about. So the Next Generation Science Standards, or they are called NGSS, are bringing kindergarten through senior science education in the 21st century. The Next Generation Science Standards are still very young. Only 16 states have adopted them. These standards prepare us for a smooth transition, and with that in mind, there are some things you should know as a teacher going into this. The NGSS is not a curriculum. These standards are just a series of goals to help us as teachers set up our instruction. They are not lesson plans. They are not a guide. They're just a basic outline to help us guide the lessons and assessments in different grades. You'll see in a few slides that I'll show you just the breakdown of the Next Generation Science Standards. They are emphasizing science practice. We want to make sure that we let our students exam and understand the world. It sets them up for important things like the engineering and the understanding of the world. We don't know the future of the Next Generation Science Standards yet. Like I said, they're very young. It is adopted, if it would be adopted in our school, though, that we need everybody on board. So you, as a future teacher, the student teacher, we want to make sure that we understand each aspect of them, and I'll walk through some of the basics coming up. So, as a future teacher, we want to make sure we understand standards. When you click on a Next Generation Science Standard, it's broken down into different categories. You're going to see here, I've got a fourth grade one up, for Earth and Human Anatomy. And it's just an activity here of performance expectations. That's something that is a huge focus. We want to know what our students are expected to know. Science practices, how are we going to accomplish those? Content, core ideas, and scientific concepts, and then at the end, connections to other standards, so the connections to the Common Core, and then we bring that back to make sure that we're bringing that into literacy and math. It's very important that we see these different standards. So, as a student teacher, I know that, let's hypothetically say that you're going to be teaching kindergarten. One of the standards, and I wrote about this in a paper, was the ESS2. Number 1, which was use and share observations of local weather conditions to help describe patterns over time. This basically means that we want our students to look at different things, patterns in weather. You're going to see on a chart with the sunny, cloudy, rainy, stormy, warm, cold, etc. We want to look at a specific allotted time and see a pattern over time. This is a tool that you could use. This would be just a monthly calendar. Where we would look at each day. We can use this in technology. We could go look at the forecast. We could go outside with their thermometer, and we want to be able to observe the world around us. That's important for our students in the NGSS standards, that they're able to see these trends, but we want to be able to prove it with evidence. So we're looking at, the first Thursday you see there, it's sunny, and 4 days out of June it was sunny. 3 days it was rainy, 2 days it was cloudy, 2 days it was partly cloudy, and 1 day it was stormy. As we continue on the month, we're going to see a trend. We know in Nebraska that June can be very hot. I'm in Kansas City right now on a mission trip, and we're seeing the same type of weather down here, but we know that that can be different in different parts of the world. And so we want our students to know where they're at, and we want them to be able to explore and use engineering skills. So as a future teacher, you as a student teacher, you're going to learn that our standards are important because they guide our instruction. Like I said, I pulled the lesson as an example to show you here about observing local weather and describing patterns over time for those students. The visual I showed you was June, and then you're going to see the science standard here with core ideas, practices, and cross-cutting examples. So I broke this down into different categories that we want to see in the NGSS. So performance expectations. These are things that we want our students to do, and we expect them to do throughout the lesson. And so in this lesson, we want our students to find the weather patterns over time. The students will be able to be using the chart. As you see, I used the month of June. And then at the end of that lesson, we also want to make sure that we're assessing our students, making sure that they're understanding through the 3 dimensions the trends. disciplinary core ideas. These are the basics of science and engineering practices. So we want our students to be able to investigate the world. We want them to be able to design and build systems, so we can have them come up with their own chart, their own visuals. They engage, you'll see here, in practices to build, deepen, and apply their knowledge and core ideas and cross-cutting concepts. Now, a big thing with these standards is we want these to be expanded. You're going to see that something that we teach as teachers in kindergarten, as you're a student teacher, you're going to see that again for those students in third grade. The concept will just get harder. And so we want to make sure that we are very specific as the standards guide us at the level of depth and complexity for each level of the standard. Here is the cross-cutting concepts, very important part. The application of science, physical science, life science, earth science, space science, engineering science. There are so many things, but we all want to make sure that in those standards we're pointing out things, patterns. That's the one that, as a student teacher, you taught in kindergarten. Cause and effect, why is that happening? Scales, proportions, quantities, systems, models, engineering, the list continues. We want to make sure that we know what we're doing and we know why we're doing it for our students. Connections to engineering, technology, and applications of science. I gave the example earlier, as a student teacher, you're going to see that the technology world is taking over. We want to make sure that our technology is intentional. We want to make sure that we're not just putting fluff in our lessons, but in the standards, we want to make sure that our students are learning core concepts and that the technology is guiding them and helping them. So I said, again, we could use technology to look at the forecast, we could look at the future, we could look at trends over time, we could look at other areas. We want our students to be able to expand those ideas and look at their world. Connections to the nature of science. Again, very important that we help our students understand not only why this is happening, but what next. So the specific trends of the weather and the world and how things can change. Again, these things are expanded over time. It's different in different areas of the world. This is specifically, like I said, related to this kindergarten lesson. You're going to see that we want to expand our curriculum. So we want, as teachers, and you as a future teacher, as a student teacher, we want to make sure that you can bring that into math. So we'll use numbers. We'll count how many days there were. We'll say, what was the most specific weather? We can extend that. We can say, what was the least? What was the more? How many more? Etc. And then as a teacher, I think it's always important that we understand why we're teaching this. So I looked at different standards, and you as a student teacher, I think it's really important to see what's coming ahead, to see why something's happening. So this kindergarten lesson also happens again in third grade and fourth grade and fifth grade, where they're expanded to different concepts. You're going to see that over time, these concepts for the NGSS standards, they are they're very specific, but yet they're going to be more broad because we want to make sure that we are focusing on key ideas, but the general idea is that our students are learning the science form. I'm very excited for you to be in your first classroom. Like I said, the next generation science standards have not been adopted by all states right now. So if you would get a job in Nebraska, Nebraska is not one of the states that has adopted these standards. Arkansas, California, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Maryland, Nevada, New Jersey, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, and Washington, D.C. have implemented these. Those are a lot of the Midwestern states, and I'm excited to see what these standards do. And I think as a student teacher, you need to start doing your research and forming your opinions. I think that no matter what happens, we need to make sure that our students are engaged in science. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm excited for your future teaching. I will be here to help you along the way.